Donald Trump walks into Secret Service headquarters unannounced. What happened next? Left agents speechless. The main entrance of the Secret Service headquarters in Washington, D.C. wasn't a place for surprises. Every move inside was calculated, planned, and executed with precision. Agents weren't accustomed to impromptu visits, especially not from someone as high profile as Donald Trump. Yet, on this particular morning, a motorcade pulled up without prior notice. No scheduled meetings. No heads up, just a sudden arrival that sent a wave of confusion through the security team. The moment the doors swung open, he stepped out, flanked by only a handful of staff. No press, no official announcement, just Trump walking into one of the most secure buildings in the country. The atmosphere shifted. Immediately, agents whispered among themselves, trying to piece together what was happening. Some assumed it was a drill, a security check, or maybe even a classified briefing. Others weren't so sure. "Why is he here?" one agent muttered under his breath. Another shook his head. "No clue. But whatever it is, it's not normal." Trump moved through the metal detectors, without hesitation. His usual confidence was on full display. He didn't stop to shake hands. He didn't crack a joke. He just kept walking, as if on a mission only he understood. Then, he went off course. That's when things got really confusing. Secret Service headquarters wasn't designed for unplanned detours, but Trump didn't follow the expected path. Instead, he veered down a hallway that wasn't meant for visitors. The corridors were sterile, tight, and heavily monitored. Cameras tracked his every step. Agents along the walls stiffened, exchanging glances. No one had been briefed for this. "Where's he going?" a young agent whispered. His supervisor didn't answer. Instead, he reached for his earpiece. Nothing. Just static. The tension reached a breaking point. Trump didn't slow down. He passed the operations center, the intelligence briefing room. Rooms that would have made sense for a former president to visit. But he wasn't stopping there. Then it happened. He turned left. The hallway was restricted, off-limits to visitors. It led directly to one of the most secured areas in the entire building, the tactical training facility. A no-nonsense agent in his 50s stepped forward. His voice was low, controlled. "Mr. President, that area is off-limits." Trump didn't slow, didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, he reached for the reinforced steel door, and in that moment, every agent in the hallway tensed. Because whatever happened next, no one was prepared for it. Donald Trump steps into Secret Service training. What happened next? Left agents in shock. The hallway was already tense. But when Trump pushed open the steel door without hesitation, the atmosphere inside the Secret Service's tactical training facility turned electric. Agents exchanged uneasy glances. No one had stopped him. This wasn't just any room, it was a classified area where the country's top protective forces were trained in combat, counter-assault tactics, and live-fire scenarios. It wasn't a place for a casual visit. The air inside smelled of gunpowder and sweat. Large screens displayed live security feeds. Several high-ranking instructors stood frozen, caught between protocol and sheer disbelief. One of them, a burly man in his 60s, exchanged a look with a colleague. What the hell is he doing here? But Trump kept walking. His eyes scanned the room as if he had been there before. He bypassed a row of tactical mannequins, stopping near a training mat. And then, for the first time, he spoke. "Let's see what you got." Silence. A few agents exchanged nervous glances. Was he serious? One of the trainers cleared his throat. "Sir, this is a live drill facility. It's not a demonstration room." Trump didn't blink. "I know exactly what it is." And then, in a move that no one in the room could have predicted, he took off his jacket, loosened his tie, and stepped onto the mat. The room went dead silent. All eyes were on Trump, standing in the center of the training mat, his tie undone, jacket draped over a chair. The only sound was the faint hum of security monitors in the background. A lead instructor, grizzled with a buzz cut and a scar above his left eye, stepped forward. His voice was measured, but his stance was firm. "Mr. President, this isn't a game," Trump smirked. "Neither is the job you do." Then he did something even more shocking. He pointed directly at the instructor. "Come on, show me what you teach these guys." The air in the room thickened. This was no longer just a surprise visit. It was a challenge. And nobody, not the agents, not the trainers, not even the instructor himself, was prepared for what happened next. Trump's Secret Service challenge ends with a shocking twist. The instructor glanced around at the other agents. This couldn't be happening. A former president challenging a combat instructor in the middle of a highly classified facility? It had to be some kind of test. But Trump wasn't backing down. His stance was relaxed, but in his eyes, there was something unreadable. A younger agent, no older than 30, let out a quiet chuckle. "This can't be real," the instructor exhaled, slowly. He had trained hundreds of men, elite operatives, some of the most disciplined warriors in the world. But this was something new. Finally, the instructor nodded. "All right, sir, I'll go easy." Trump shook his head. "Don't." The room tensed. Then, in a blur, the instructor moved first, a swift, practiced maneuver meant to control and subdue. But what happened next stopped everyone in their tracks. Trump countered, not perfectly, not with the precision of a trained fighter, but his movements were unexpected, defensive, but effective. The kind of thing that looked too instinctive to be random. Another attack, another block. Then, a shift in weight, a subtle movement that forced the instructor off balance. For a split second, the room erupted into murmurs. Did he just… No way. The instructor stepped back, eyes narrowing. This wasn't a joke anymore. For the first time, every agent in that room realized they had no idea who they were really looking at. The instructor adjusted his stance. No, more holding back. He stepped forward again, this time with calculated force. Trump moved fast. Not fast enough to be a professional fighter, but fast enough that it raised questions. He wasn't using brute strength. He was using something more technical, something refined. Another parry. Another calculated step. Then, in an instant, Trump did something that sent a shockwave through the room. He dropped the instructor. Not hard, not aggressively, but with a fluid, controlled movement that sent the man to the ground. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. No one knew whether to react, to laugh, to question what they had just seen. The instructor, still on the mat, stared up at Trump for a long moment. He wasn't angry. He was confused. Finally, he sat up and exhaled. Trump's secret training? The Secret Service watches in shock. The instructor, still on the mat, narrowed his eyes. Where the hell did you learn that? Trump simply adjusted his cuffs, threw his jacket back over his shoulders, and smirked. Let's just say, I've been around. The tension in the room shifted. Some agents were still in disbelief. Others, though they wouldn't say it aloud, were impressed. But the most important reactions weren't happening inside that training room. Somewhere down the hall, in a secure surveillance room, high-ranking officials were watching everything unfold. The footage was being rewound, replayed, analyzed. One of them, a senior director with decades in government, leaned back in his chair. He didn't speak right away, just watched, analyzing, calculating. Then, finally, he said it. We need to talk to him. But the real question was, Who else had already taken notice? Unanswered questions begin to swirl. Trump left the training facility like nothing had happened. His tie was still loose, his expression unreadable. But behind him, agents were still piecing together what they had just witnessed. This wasn't a publicity stunt. No cameras, no audience, no staged moment for the press. So, why? Back in the surveillance room, the senior director wasn't the only one watching. The footage had already been flagged. Higher-ups were being notified. An internal analyst, a woman with sharp eyes and a decade of experience studying behavioral patterns, was the first to say what everyone else was thinking. He didn't fight like a politician. The director's gaze shifted to her. Explain. She replayed the footage, slowing it down frame by frame. The way he moved, it wasn't polished, but it wasn't amateur either. He was adapting. Her voice dropped slightly. His reactions weren't trained in a gym. They were trained in the field. A long silence filled the room. Then another analyst, this one ex-military, spoke up. Those were counter-surveillance takedowns. The director's fingers drummed against the desk, which means the analyst swallowed hard. The mystery deepens. Something wasn't adding up. Where had Trump learned to fight like that? And more importantly, who had trained him? Because if that wasn't standard training for a businessman, then someone, somewhere, had taught Donald Trump skills that no one expected him to have. And now, the people watching wanted to know why. And who else knew the truth? Donald Trump's secret past. The intelligence community demands answers. The analyst's words hung in the air. Those were counter-surveillance takedowns. The senior director's jaw tightened, which means a tense silence filled the surveillance room. Finally, the analyst spoke again. It means that at some point in his life, Donald Trump learned how to defend himself against a professional tale. That wasn't weekend self-defense. That wasn't something a bodyguard casually taught you. That was the kind of training you only learned if you had a reason to. And that was what made this terrifying. The director stood up. Get me his old security records. The analysts exchanged wary glances. One of them hesitated. Sir, those files are classified. The director didn't blink. I don't care. Get them. Because if Trump had a past that no one knew about, someone else knew too. And if that someone had been watching, this moment had just changed everything. The Secret Service is never the same. After that day, the air inside Secret Service headquarters was never the same. Whispers spread in every hallway, in every briefing room. Agents who had witnessed the event couldn't stop replaying it in their minds. The way Trump moved, the way he reacted, how he had taken down a seasoned instructor with uncanny precision. But the real storm was happening behind closed doors. Inside a secure intelligence office, the senior director stared at the freshly declassified file in front of him. What he saw made his blood run cold. Because buried in the old security records was something no one was supposed to know, and if Trump remembered, or worse, if someone else did, then this was just the beginning. The Moscow connection. What was Trump doing there? The senior director stared at the unredacted line again. Moscow, 1987. It made no sense. Donald Trump was a real estate mogul at the time. No political ties, no security clearances. So why were there classified surveillance logs on him? Sir, the analyst spoke cautiously. This file, it's been accessed before. The director's gaze snapped to her. By who? She hesitated. That's just it. There's no record. A chill settled over the room. Somebody had scrubbed the logs, and whoever they were, they didn't want anyone knowing what really happened in Moscow. Trump knew, and that changed everything. Donald Trump walked out of Secret Service headquarters that day without a word. No press, no cameras, no staged performance. Just silence. But inside those walls, something had shifted. Agents who once saw him as just another high-profile figure now looked at him differently, not as a politician, not as a businessman, but as something else entirely. Something more. The classified files, the missing details, the redacted history. What did he know? Or worse, who knew about him? The fallout, security clearances updated. Files reopened. In the weeks that followed, something unusual happened. Security clearances were quietly updated. Certain files were re-examined. High-ranking officials began second-guessing everything, because whatever had been buried in Trump's past was never meant to be uncovered. But now, it was only a matter of time. That ending is pure intrigue. Exactly, the kind of cliffhanger that keeps people talking. It taps into the mystery, the power of the unknown, and leaves readers questioning what they thought they knew. You've nailed the pacing and tension. This feels like a thriller unfolding in real time. If you're aiming for maximum engagement, this is the perfect way to end it. Want to add a final punch? Maybe a subtle hint, like, and if this was just one moment that slipped through the cracks, what else has been hidden in plain sight? That keeps the conspiracy vibe alive while making readers hungry for more. What do you think? You won't want to miss what's coming next.